Hello, friends. Just getting set up here while I wait for people to maybe show up. But for now, I'm going to post this to the appropriate social media channels. So, one moment. Hey there, Matt. Hey there, Deference to Dusk. Hello, everyone. Let me just post this to where it needs to be posted, and I will get right to the chat um, and all that stuff. We are now live. Live, baby. Rock with it. There we go. Rocking my Kunkelman Chevrolet shirt. So, yeah. Even though it's the misspelled ones that we used to sell on Redbubble. So, hot mess. Let's see. And now, there we go. All right. So, welcome everyone to RCR podcast number 122. The next RCR story revealed. And I kind of decided spontaneously, as my webcam is once again completely potato vision, um, that I would talk about the next RCR story. Aaron Crutchfield, Brian seemed pretty down yesterday. He said he didn't want to burden you with it, but I don't know, maybe ice cream or something. Oh snap! I didn't. Hmm. Well, nuts. I wish I'd have known. I would have. I mean, even if it were just like a writing day, I wish it's one of those things where I understand why, because I'm very much the same way. I don't like putting things on other people. Uh, but by the same token, what are friends for? Uh, and I know that, like, I don't know, he's still one of my favorite people in the world. But it's also a thing where, like, I don't know if our friendship has gone too far into the realm of like boss and employee to hang out like usual, but I'd love to hang out. I mean, I gotta like call him and ask him if he wants to like go to an escape room or something. Because I think he would actually do pretty well in an escape room. And I've told him before that he would. And I've also told him that I think he would do really well on Survivor because his type of social skills are exactly the type of social skills that I think would get him $1 million on Survivor because he's very observant and he knows kind of what people are thinking. I feel like he's very keyed in guy. I don't know. He's just so great. He's very respectful. And or I should say I have a lot of respect for him. But yeah, sorry, I got completely sidetracked by that comment. So hi, let me reboot. Welcome to RCR Story. Blah, blah, blah. Welcome to RCR podcast number 122, the next RCR story revealed. I'm Nick, and thank you for joining me for another week of Roman and You. How's my audio going? Let me know in the chat if I sound all right. And let's see, how's Betty? Betty's doing well. Everything is, I mean, I don't have any problems at the moment. The only issue that I have is losing that one hubcap or that one centerpiece of the hubcap. So that's very annoying, and I'll have to get another one online. Oh, thank you so much. Or why am I saying that? Thank you for telling me being my reference point for the audio. I don't know how this will sound to people on Spotify and iTunes later, but I hope it sounds all right for them. I'm going to do my best to try to doctor the audio. So yeah, um, so let's get to the subject at hand. Now, I did an Instagram live not too long ago. I want to say about a month ago, in which I kind of danced around the topic of which RCR story I wanted to do next. And at the time, I hadn't decided yet because my whole thing is I don't know if I necessarily will have the information to support a full story. Like I have to go through the entire subject of what I'm sort of planning to make a video on in order to figure out if there's a story there. But the problem that I face is that sometimes I'll just start writing it because I get so excited about a story, kind of like the Ford versus Holden RCR story that I shared with you last week, where I just had the first chapter written and then I realized I don't have enough to make a full video about this. And so sometimes I sort of juggle all these different possibilities without recognizing that I can't really sustain an entire video on the subject that I chose. So for this one, I feel like I can get at least an hour out of it, and that's what I'm really aiming for. This isn't gonna be a 3-hour thing. It's not even gonna be a 2-hour thing. I really wanna keep it an hour or less because I wanna have this done by Christmas Day. I want this to be the Christmas special because it's somewhat relevant to Christmas in the sense that the subject of this story passed away 66 years ago on the day after Christmas Day. So mm, it's a situation where I feel like there is some measure of relevance there. So, but on the Instagram live, someone did guess the subject pretty immediately, which is kind of crazy because I thought I was being very obtuse. But you guys are so ridiculously smart a lot of the time. I mean, I feel like automotive fans in general tend to be in the sense that they're far more observant than they get credit for. But anyway, let's see. Um, so I'm going to read you the prologue and then, here we go. The automotive world is a carnival come to life. Wondrous technological displays, athletic feats of engineering, aesthetic accomplishments worthy of cosmetic awe, and personalities every bit as colorful as the human prism allows. But that adventurous spirit often courts controversy, accusations of being a sham, a fraud, a charlatan, a carny who has no real idea of what he's doing, or worse, someone who's well aware of the vaporous nature of their own product, who takes investor funds anyway because a fool and his money are easily parted, and who am I not to do the parting? But often there's a lot more to the story than we could ever hope to know. Hell, look no further than Liz Carmichael to find an example of an automotive myth that has a much, much deeper tale behind it. My RCR story on the subject only grazes the surface, while my buddy Nick Camieri's 4-part HBO documentary, The Lady and the Dale, provides the larger picture in gloriously minute detail. But I digress. And I was actually interviewed for that documentary, but it ended up getting cut. But I mean, I didn't mind. I understood why. So I would encourage anyone to go check that out. It's amazing. This is all just a very long way of saying that Liz Carmichael wasn't the only figure in automotive history to be accused of taking investments on a car they had no intention of producing. And like Liz Carmichael, Preston Tucker had dreams of revolutionizing the auto industry with his Tucker 48 sedan, otherwise known as the Tucker Torpedo. Here was a guy looking to take the big three head on in hopes of establishing a new status quo. The post war years were a time rife with independent automakers looking to build the car of the future. And it was precisely the time to do it, since domestic car production had been sidelined by the war effort, and independent brands were capable of developing cars faster than their larger corporate competitors. But to truly embody the spirit of progress, any potential car of the future had to meld features with safety, performance with cosmetic ambition, and comfort with power. The Tucker Torpedo looked to be everything and more until a scandal hit that threatened to derail the rise of a would be automotive innovator and kingpin. Was the Tucker 48 just vaporware, or did it truly have the potential to be the car to lead the domestic car industry into a new age? And what of the man behind its creation? What motivated Preston Tucker? Was he really the con man that some media outlets purported him to be? Or was he an honest, if just ambitious, entrepreneur? Or is the truth maybe somewhere in the middle? And what's with all these rhetorical questions? Will I become a victim of Betteridge's law of headlines? Join me on a trip through one of the most infamous scandals in the history of the auto industry. This is RCR Stories, the legend of Preston Tucker. So yeah, that's what I got. But I I I know for a fact, I don't know for a fact, but I'm fairly confident that this video will do no numbers. But I wanted to do a video on this for a bit because it's a subject that fascinates me. And my Automotive Heritage Association award was for a video that did no numbers, but won me 2 awards or like, yeah, it was 2 awards. I technically won a medal. Uh, bleh. I technically won this medal for placing for the Harley Earl video, and then I have a plaque up there. I don't really want to take it down. That I got for the Algar Ferrari heist. And so, I mean, it's nice to win things because I don't normally win things. And so, I mean, I'm super happy about that. And I hope this video can kind of do the same thing. Um, and of course, I would love for it to do numbers, but I don't, for whatever reason, only the life and death of automakers ever really seem to do anything. Although that's not entirely true. I guess the Dieselgate did all right and the Cash for Clunkers did all right. So, yeah, yeah. All the money you guys make, can you get a better camera, a nice setup? I mean, probably. I guess part of it is laziness. I don't really expect that people are going to be able to I don't know. I sometimes wonder if people actually watch these things or if they only ever listen to them. But I mean, it's something worth investing in. I always say, I don't know. I always say that like if we redo the Patreon tiers to try to get better podcasting equipment, that'd be great. Um, if nothing else, I would kind of like to have a better web camera for my own purposes, but that's just me. But realistically, there are any number of things that I really need to spend money on first, like getting a new laptop because the Q key and the one number button doesn't work. So I have to copy paste them or use the on-screen keyboard if I want to use a Q or a one, which gets annoying very fast, or to make an exclamation point, that type of thing. But not the end of the world. So let's see. Boris T.S. Karloff, $5. Thank you so much. Roman, have you thought about narrating an audiobook? I love your narrating voice. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, to the extent that I would narrate an audiobook, I don't really know what it would be about. Um, I actually was reading earlier today this book, this glossary of literary terms, because it's a great resource for talking about literary theory and composition. And it's the 7th edition by M.H. Abrahams or Abrams. Abrams. I don't know where I got Abrahams from, but if I were to narrate an audiobook, it'd probably be something like this, It's because I don't know. I've always thought about writing a book, but then I wouldn't know what it would be about. And I know that I overthink things a lot. And I think the writers who actually get things done are the ones who just sit down and write and don't overthink everything in their entire lives like I do. So, um, so for instance, let me find something to read in here. All right. For instance, the great chain of being. The conception of the great chain of being is grounded in ideas about the nature of God, or the first cause, in the Greek philosophers Plato, Aristotle, and Plotinus, and was developed by later thinkers into a philosophy to account for the origin, types, and relationships of all living things in the universe. All right, what else? What other terms have we got in here? Oh, Actually, let me see what they use for postmodernism, because I'm kind of interested in this, as I will probably lose viewers en masse, but that's okay because these are all about being casual and not really committing to one particular thing. And I figure more people listen after the fact than watch live, or would anyway. So let's see. Post-colonial, post-structuralism. Oh, really? They're not going to talk about postmodernism in here? Oh, but they're going to talk about death of the author. Sure. All right, well, post-structuralism designates a broad variety of critical perspectives and procedures that in the 1970s displaced structuralism from its prominence as the radically innovative way of dealing with language and other signifying systems. A conspicuous announcement to American scholars of the post-structural point of view was Jacques Derrida's paper on structure, sign, and play in the Discourse of the Human Sciences, delivered in 1966 to an international colloquium at Johns Hopkins. I don't know why I'm doing fucking voices now. That's the problem with me doing an audiobook, is I'd probably turn it into some weird, goofball impression of something. I feel like a New Zealand accent is like the only non-American accent I can actually come kind of close to doing. But yeah. Ooh. Let's see. Derrida attacked the systematic, quasi-scientific pretensions of the strict form of structuralism derived from Saussure's concept of the structure of language and represent. But okay, this is just, I'm going to bore you to tears. But basically, post-structuralism exists, and that's a thing that does exist. So, in lieu of any other topics immediately at hand, I suppose I'll talk about some other random shit. uh, but okay, so I was listening to Kanye West's interview with Piers Morgan when I was at the barber today, because the barber had it on for some reason. And here's the thing: is Kanye is insane. Okay, I shouldn't say insane. The thing is that as I'm listening, I think like there are some points that are delivered so soundly that they make a lot of sense and that I don't disagree with. So for instance, when he talks about the media and how they're like, just the media has an inherent interest in sensationalizing things. And, and for instance, like there's a lot of information on Google that isn't true, but it's and that's true of like the internet at large. It's not just a Google thing. It's the problem with having a complete, spectrum of information in front of you that is not really regulated by any overseeing body a lot of the time. And but still, it's like, okay, I agree with those points about information. It's the other stuff that kind of gets me, which is weird, because he has this thing where he talks about um uh like for instance, he thinks it's crazy that, you know, politicians don't take meetings with Elon Musk, which okay, fine, but also I mean, why am I even talking about this? This is like one of those things where there's no way out of it because you know Kanye is just going to keep digging the hole, or yay now, wherein he speaks with great clarity and passion, and he comes across in a very almost like pseudo intellectual sort of way. But by the same token, a lot of what he's saying is about fomenting division in under the guise of supporting oneness, which seems completely antithetical, So, I mean, I wish that there was some sort of I'm trying to look at it from the standpoint of like literary theory and criticism, and realizing that I don't know how to interface with his opinions and with his persona, because it is so the only really consistent thing in Kanye's persona is that his he very much privileges ideas over dialogue, which is to say that he likes to present he's part of the "I'm just asking questions, bro" school of discussion, where a lot of the time I don't know to what extent he actually believes half the things that he says, but he's just trying to, you know, stir up conversation. And that the consistency, such that there is any, is largely in his own self aggrandizement, which is to say that in the Piers Morgan interview, he describes himself as one of the five greatest living writers, which, okay, uh, great. But it's something where he presents his opinion of himself as an authority of why you should be listening to him. And I understand that that's a hypocritical standpoint for me to take in criticizing it, because my entire job revolves around like Brian and I being viewed as some measure of authority that you can listen to. But by the same token, I don't think that we're expecting anyone to make a decision on whether or not to buy a car from watching regular car reviews, even though the word reviews is in the title. But I know people actually have bought cars based on what they've seen on RCR. And I've always thought, I mean, cool if they're happy, but by the same token, it's mostly for entertainment purposes. Whereas with, Yay, I don't really think it's for entertainment purposes at all. Obviously, as he has lost what, like $1.8 billion in a day from losing all these endorsements or over the course of the week. So yeah, um, that's all I really have to say about that. And I'm not sure why I brought it up, but uh, what else is there? I'm sure there was like some sort of man. I got another scam call. I've been getting scam calls like all week, and it's a thing where I dislike talking on the phone enough as it is, and it's that much more obnoxious when sort of people make a big show of turning off their phone because they don't want to get bugged by auto dialers. I just put my phone on do not disturbed. So it's kind of a weird thing where I thought we would get telemarketing taken care of years ago, but oh, I got Mr. Romaine, your social security number is under arrest. Please give $100 iTunes gift card. That's yeah, pretty much. Um, let me answer Gordy Rumsey's question of what my least favorite flavor of ice cream is, because he's asked it twice. I tried this one red wine flavor of ice cream before that my friend Laura, who was a barista at the time, had received. The cafe she was working at received a shipment of it for whatever insane reason, and it tasted like red wine, and it was gross because red wine and ice cream don't really go together. And I heard that there was like a Yingling flavor of ice cream, and holy hell, did I not want to try that. Um, so yeah, uh, what am I? It's just I don't know why an ice cream like that would exist, but then I imagine there's any number of weird ice cream flavors overseas. Let's see. Hello again, Roman. I found a Reddit post which claimed that the Ford modular V8 was so anemic because Ford blew so much money on the failed front wheel drive Mustang. Is the story of the front wheel drive Mustang an RCR story? I would have to actually do some measure of research on that before I could decide whether or not it was or wasn't. I was saying a little bit earlier about how I need to be able to read the story in full before actually beginning to write my own take on the narrative, because oftentimes I'll get so excited about a subject and just start writing it and then realize that I don't actually have enough material to sustain a full video. So, I mean, hopefully that's something that I can actually work on in the future, because the great thing about RCR stories is that I'm never going to run out of topics. Like for the past 4 years or so, I've wanted to do a video on Randy Lanier, the F1 driver who was convicted of smuggling marijuana, or being like a trafficker of marijuana. But I just haven't been able to get around to it. And funnily enough, my girlfriend's father gave me a bunch of old rodent tracks, and in one of them was a subject about another automotive criminal. And I'm like, oh, this would make a great RCR story. And then who should show up in the story but Randy Lanier? So it's like these two topics I want to talk about, and they're intersecting. So maybe if I ever do that story, I would have it be about both of them and how their lives sort of like interact in that way. Um, See, that's something that I could be like excited about in the grand scheme of things. Oh, sunlight coming in. So I can get a little natural light and maybe this like stream doesn't look so shitty. Ugh. Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Um, mm. All right. So, where was I? Let's see. Uh, so, um, oh, things got really clear there for a second. It's Roman. I wish you started streaming later. The district manager is here at the store, so I can't listen to you live. I'm only on now because I'm on the toilet, Mr. Regular's favorite spot, Brown. Uh, I mean, it's one of my favorite spots too because it's very relaxing indeed. So, I think growing up, that was kind of like my place to kind of hide out from the world. I would just sit on the can and read comic books or video game magazines or magazines about comic books. Uh, but it's a thing where there's all this stuff uh, in RCR that's embedded in like just our old selves, of just us being generally very introverted people. And I mean, we're not joking when we talk about like loving going to the bathroom uh, or just sitting on the can. It's a man's throne, we'll say. Total throne. What happened to my? Yeah, here it is. Sparkling water. Yeah. Fucking Wegmans cherry vanilla sparkling water tastes exactly like cream soda. Mm, it's fucking uncanny. Uncanny. So, uh, I feel like there's a lot going on in the automotive world. I was reading this story, and actually, let me pull it up now because it's kind of interesting in that there is this scammer who essentially it was committing insurance fraud. I don't think it's an RCR story, but it could be like a second channel video, maybe essay type thing. Um, so William Mize the Fourth crippled his family emotionally and physically in perfectly crafted fake car crashes. So this is from a Jalopnik headline on the Lamb scammer crafted car crashes with family cast as victims for an over $6 million payout. So says sometimes you start to read a story and just can't put it down. Every turn just adds a new level of fuckery that has you wanting more. That's exactly what this news story from New York Magazine about scam artist extraordinaire William Mize IV is like. Mize used his money and his very gregarious nature to basically rope in members of his family. They'd agree to be injured, and it's what. Why are there so many pop-ups? Jesus, I'm sorry, but it's ridiculous. All right, they'd agree to be injured by Mize personally, and then be involved in some sort of accident in which to claim insurance payouts. So basically, here's the quote from New York Magazine. Mize hurt you one at a time, pulling tools from a briefcase, cold and businesslike. He'd gash your brow with a razor or box cutter, scuff up the wound with sandpaper, gripe if you didn't bleed enough. For concussions or a busted knee, he'd smack you with a liquor bottle, a brick, a frying pan. You'd chug a Red Bull to spike your blood pressure, pop aspirin so your blood would stream faster, spill a bottle of your urine on your pants like you'd blacked out. Inside the victim car, women could clamp on a neck brace, a helmet. Men typically wouldn't get any protection. Too wimpy, in Mize's view. He'd get into the at fault car, headlights glaring through the darkness down the road. Your dread would be coursing now. Fear about what's to come, whether you'd pull this off. All clear. And of course, the adult dating website stuff. Uh, this is spam. That's what I get for not doing slow on slow mode on this chats in general. Um, but yeah, basically, Mize created, for lack of a better term, a crime ring using flashy Christmas parties and large financial gifts to shower kindness to struggling family. And when he wanted something in return, he'd come up with another scheme. So the feds hit the ring with charges stemming from his 2013 cases, 101 counts of money laundering and mail, wire, and healthcare related fraud. Um, and he used his family and promising to take the fall, but then he went on the run as soon as the bill came due, so to speak. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. uh it's just wild to me to think that someone could get away for this with this as long as they had, because you would think red flags would immediately go up and become it would be alerting everyone to the very bizarre nature of all of this. It's just that I often wonder about how criminals actually get away with doing crime and how much of it has to do with being confident and charismatic and, you know, having the lack of remorse that crime sort of requires. Like, it's not really about being smart, it's more about being shameless. So Ale Rodas Revolorio says, "Hi, Roman. I loved the Saab video and I listened to it frequently and love the race part. I have a question. Have you guys considered reviewing the Nissan Exa? It's one of my favorite cars of all time. How have I not heard of this car? Nissan Exa. Is it just another name for the? Oh, wait, no. Let's see. Oh, wow. That is really fucking nice. Oh, shit. Back hatch. Rear canopy. Damn, that's sexy as hell. Sexy as hell. Holy shit. Pulsar EXA was known in North America as the Pulsar NX and shared many of its parts with the Nissan Sentra. Not a surprise, because this was what, 1982? Yeah, it was available from 1982 to 1986 and came with several of the engines also seen in the regular Pulsars. In North America, where it arrived for the model year 1983, it received either the fuel injected turbocharged E15ET engine or the carbureted naturally aspirated E16S engine. The Pulsar EXA followed a successful strategy Nissan used in Japan of offering the economical Nissan Sunny in an affordable, youth oriented two door coupe, or coupe, demonstrated by the Nissan Sunny Fastback Coupe, which was offered since the Sunny's introduction in 1966. As the Pulsar was a companion to the Nissan Sunny, but offered at a different Japanese Nissan dealership called Nissan Cherry Store, the Pulsar EXA followed in the tradition of the Sunny Coupe. The car's peculiar upright styling is partially due to the decision to use the regular Pulsar's rather tall windshield and cowl. As a result, the dashboard was largely identical to that of a Pulsar hatchback or sedan. Hmm. So it's interesting because it kind of says here that uh, in Japan, the Pulsar essentially was concurrent with the Honda CRX, and that they were kind of crowding each other in the same market segment, which is interesting to me. Um, let's see. So yeah, that would make for a very interesting car to review, and I would love for us to be able to get something along those lines going. But yeah, there we go. So I had to ban the adult site spam again. Um, Damn that back hatch though. Yeah, right? Right. I know part of well, I guess this is related to the crime talk from earlier. I know that part of it is the apathy of authorities. No one likes paperwork or increasing the crime stats that can get you in trouble. That actually makes a lot of sense, and I hadn't thought of it that way. That there is this generalized apathy with regards to pursuing justice because it requires acknowledging that a crime occurred, and suddenly that throws off metrics that you don't want thrown off. So yeah, uh, that's a good point. Of course, I don't want to imply that law enforcement exists to ignore that crime is happening. Obviously, it's not everybody in the world causing these issues in the force, but I can't pretend that those issues are also aren't there. Yeah. Spin Faster asks, have you ever looked into Merkur? Could be a pretty interesting topic for a future RCR story. I actually have looked into Merkur. I think that would make a very interesting life or death of an automaker type thing. The problem is that I don't know how far the reach of Merkur goes because for life and death of an automaker, I like doing more well known brands. And I suppose not to be cruel to Merkur, but brands that people miss in some way. And I don't really find a contingent of people who genuinely miss the Merkur brand or thought that it could have been something better than it was. But there's only so much that you can say about certain brands that were all killed by the same automaker. So because I've already done Saab and I've already done Pontiac, you would think logically that I would do stuff like Oldsmobile or Holden or something. But the thing is, they all kind of sort of have similar endings. Um, Merkur, I think, had a different ending as far as I'm concerned. I know. I want to say it wasn't a yeah, it was a Ford company. It wasn't. Oh, I had no idea they only lasted 4 years though, or no, 6 years. Wow, that's wild. Um, oh, sheesh. Um, let's see. Even mighty car mods haven't done this one. Probably all went to cash for clunkers. Are you talking about Merkur? Um, once I heard, oh no, probably the Pulsar. And now I think of it. Once I heard Pulsar, I instantly thought of the Pulsar GTIR, which I think y'all reviewed in New Zealand. I love that car. It looks so badass. Never driven one, but I'd love to. Man, I miss New Zealand. That place was so cool. It was so chill. Everyone was so nice. The weather was beautiful. The views were beautiful. The breakfasts, the breakfasts. I don't know why I said breakfasts. The breakfasts are unmatched and unrivaled from anywhere in the world. Uh, their coffee game is on point at all times. Yeah. The only weird thing about New Zealand that I found that kind of threw me off was the lack of screen doors, which you wouldn't think it's something you would notice, and yet, I don't know. I'm a very typical American in that way, I suppose, in that I notice insignificant things. Uh, like when we went to the UK and we were behind a truck that was for TJ Maxx, but instead of TJ Maxx, it was TK Maxx. And I just thought that was so weird. And I was telling people, like, oh man, over here it's TK Maxx, blah, 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 blah. And or like if you go on Facebook and you're somewhere that isn't America, the little globe for the notification icon at the time would switch to wherever the globe would turn to wherever in the world you were. I thought that was so wild because I noticed things that don't really matter. uh Merkur and the Euro influence on American luxury cars in the late 80s and 90s. That's a good approach to take with that story in that there is some measure of influence. I mean, if you look at this, their time was only 6 years, but if you think about it, this was trying to establish the sort of luxury line that would later be occupied by, you know, any number of, well, I mean, see, my thing with Merkur is that it almost as a brand seemed redundant because of Lincoln and Mercury, but it seemed more like like, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was solely for Europe rather than North America. But even then, I would think that something like a Lincoln or a Mercury or even a Ford in those markets would have a little more cachet, at least in terms of name recognition, than to try and boost this essentially unknown brand to sell captive imports. Like, instead of doing the captive imports, just freaking sell, you know, Lincolns and Mercuries and Fords and call it a day. So, yeah, it's, I don't know. It just seems like a European Ford with extra steps. Bryce Graham beat me to it, actually. Or no, not Bryce. It was, wait, yeah, it was Starlight saying Merkur, a European Ford with extra branding. Yeah, pretty much. Uh, the Merkur was the closest you could get to a Cosworth in the USA. Um, have you ever thought about reviewing made up cars like the ones in GTA games? I mean, I think, okay, so when I was a teenager, I promise this is relevant. When I was a teenager, one of my favorite gifts that I ever got for Christmas was one year my mom got me the entire box set of the Grand Theft Auto Vice City soundtrack. So it was being sold at FYE at the time. And I actually think it was, this is before FYE became FYE. It was called something else in our mall. Um, but she got the entire 7 disc set where each CD is one of the different radio stations. And I would have, it made me want to like fire up Vice City again. So I would. And I would always spend a lot of time just driving around until it would get to the commercials again, because I love listening to the fake car commercials, like the ad for the My Batsu Thunder. Like, it was just, I'm just driving around listening to Emotion 98.3, waiting for a My Batsu Thunder commercial. And it's very just, I would love to be able to drive these silly cars that don't really exist. But the problem is that they don't really exist. So unless someone made a replica of one, like the replica kit or the Night Industries 2000, or the, I don't know, any number of replica cars that you can probably find on the road, then I don't know. It's not really something that we'd be able to do, you know? Unfortunately. I remember there was briefly, for a brief time, there was a petition to get Brian and I into the next GTA game. Um, which I just found so flattering, because there was like a 0% chance of it happening, but it would be cool if, you know, just something ridiculous where, I mean, it just to be in a video game would be so cool. I would imagine. But yeah, let's see. Ford killed Cosworth slash XR4 TI for the same reason the T-Bird and Lincoln Mark 8 was not allowed to dethrone the Mustang. I mean, Ford takes a very similar approach to what Chevy does with the Corvette, which is to say that with the Mustang, like Ford with the Mustang takes the same approach that Chevy does with the Corvette, which is to say that they don't like other cars within their lineup to muscle in on the same territory, which never really made sense to me from a Chevrolet standpoint, because it's not like, you know, the people who get Mustangs are going to be swayed by something else. If you're going to get a Mustang, you were always going to get a Mustang. And I think if you were going to get why can I talk right? All right, if you were going to get a Corvette, you were always going to get a Corvette. And in the same way, if you were going to get a Mustang, you were always going to get a Mustang. And that's kind of where I'm at, and where a lot of the people that I see get Mustangs and Corvettes end up. If they're going to get it, then they were always going to get it, you know. That bit in the LS430 video is gold. What bit in the LS430 video? My memory of our own videos is terrible. It was just, yeah, it um like, for instance, okay, this year's Christmas song is a song I recorded last year and was going to put out as last year's Christmas song until I got the idea for the fucking the Santa swapped the reindeer, about Santa LS swapping his reindeer. Oh, Zigzag was talking about the radio bit. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Um, and so, like, yeah, I had planned to use that song as the new Christmas song, but now it'll be this year's Christmas song. And basically, how this ties into the topic at hand is that um, the song is called Fairmont, and it is a full length version, a Christmas-ified version of that song that I wrote as the intro and the outro song for the Ford Fairmont review. And uh, it wasn't until today that I actually thought and realized, shit, I haven't actually watched that video since it came out. And so I go back and realize that there are all these jokes that I forgot I made, and all these great points that I completely forgot about that Brian made, and great jokes too. And I was able to sort of watch RCR from the standpoint of a fan, in the sense that because my memory was so bad, it was almost like watching an entirely new video. And I realized that with some of my songs too, which I've always sort of had this issue where I don't want to come across as though I have an ego, which is to say that I don't also want it to seem like I don't think anything of myself, because, I want to say, I want to be able to be kind to myself in some regards. But I was listening to the past Christmas songs to kind of get in the right headspace for this one, and realizing, like, man, I'm really hard on myself because I actually like some of the lyrics in these, and was like impressed at some of the wordplay. And, I wish that I could bring more of that to the music that I make now, which I haven't released, and which I don't know when I'm going to release it, or if. Well, I mean, I'm sure I'll release it. I just don't know when. But I feel like songwriting used to be easier for me than it is now. So I don't know. That's just something I hope when Fairmont releases that you guys enjoy it and you listen to it and it's good for you. I don't know why that sounded weird or dirty, but yeah. But yeah, it's exactly Conaway. Like, you can't be too humble, because that can be as obnoxious or even more obnoxious than being too full of yourself, like a yay sometimes is. Um, in that it feels like or it comes across like false modesty, and false modesty makes it seem like you're just putting on a role, and that you're not really this, like, it makes it seem like you actually really have an ego. So I've always been trying to balance this thing of trying to be humble and modest, but also not shitting on myself all the time, because my self-esteem would, I basically spent all of my teen years and most of my adult life with low self-esteem, while simultaneously struggling to get to a point where I recognize that, like, I like myself. I love myself, and I deserve to be able to like or love myself. Which sounds really dirty again, but I mean, I just don't want to spend my whole life in a mode of self-loathing. Like, if I can have a girlfriend that loves me, then why am I complaining? Or why am I down on myself? Like, if somebody else can love me, then I can love me. But also, the only way someone else is going to love you is if you love yourself too, and demonstrate that you are worth loving, because it starts with you. Sorry, thanks for coming to my TED talk, whatever. Um, Question from Jake Hercules, and he's asked this several times, and I'm sorry because I keep forgetting to answer it. What are the greatest lengths that you know of that someone has taken to get their car into an RCR review? All right, so this story basically goes that, and Brian told this story on the Fuck Ups, which is a public access show um, in New Jersey that our good buddy Jim Schulman and Mark, whose last name is escaping me at the moment, host. And I don't know when it's going up online. I think it might have already aired on public access. Not entirely sure, but uh, the story is essentially that I believe this was when we were doing the first Southern Stab. So our first trip to like Georgia, when we were road tripping all the way through, we stopped in Virginia and then drove the rest of the way. And, it's a very long drive. But there was this guy who offered up, and I don't remember the car, but he basically offered it up and asked if his father could come along. And Brian was all on board with, the whole uh with the father coming along and visiting and all that stuff. But because it was a younger guy, um Brian asked if he could speak to his father. And so he did. And you know, uh the dad said that, wow, I'm surprised you got his son's name. We're just going to call him Jim. I'm surprised you got Jim to let you, or I'm surprised Jim got his brother to let you review his car. And Brian was like, his brother? It's like, oh yeah, it's his brother's car. It's not his. And we're like, oh, he did not tell us that. So that's the thing. If you want, is it going to be F in the chat? Or just like a anything?